Batman and Spawn have two crossovers, and both of them were published in 1994. Spawn vs. Batman was published by Image Comics. It was written by Frank Miller with art by Todd McFarlane. Batman Spawn War Devil was published by DC Comics. Written by Doug Mahnke, Chuck Dixon and Alan Grant, this story was illustrated by Klaus Janson. In this video, we're taking a look at these graphic novels and we're gonna find out if they are actually good and which one of them is better. This one starts out with Batman tracking down a mysterious organization that has been creating cyborgs with human bodies, and all the clues lead Batman to New York City. Meanwhile, Spawn burns a couple of thugs alive, as usual, and Batman goes berserk after witnessing this. He attacks Spawn, leading to their first confrontation, which is brutal and it ends with the two of them completely wasted. After the fight, Spawn comes across one of these cyborgs and finds out that the leader of this strange program is a notorious woman, a public figure and a humanitarian. Spawn destroys one of her bases and decides to stop her evil plans. This lady then summons Batman and convinces him that Spawn is a threat to her benevolent goals. Batman immediately forgets all about the cyborgs and becomes determined to stop Spawn. Batman finds Spawn and they start beating the living hell out of each other until they have to join forces to stop one of those cyborgs. Batman almost dies in the attack, and after Spawn destroys the enemy, he uses his powers to save Batman from a certain death. It is then that they realize they have a common enemy, the woman that has been using them and the real threat of the story. Finally, Batman and Spawn work together to stop the nuclear attack that this woman had prepared. After saving New York and eliminating the woman, Batman and Spawn part ways. But not before Batman sticks a batarang right up Spawn's ugly face. This one begins showing us the origin of Gotham and an ancient curse placed in the city. A curse that has remained until the modern days, when evil things are set in motion once again. Batman starts looking for a man involved in something big, and all the clues lead him to the Gotham Tower, a new, tall building right in the middle of the city. The news about the opening of the Gotham Tower reached New York City, and Spawn recognizes the place from when he was still a human. Looking for answers about his previous life, Spawn goes to Gotham City. There, he remembers that he was hired to kill Simon Vesper, the owner of Gotham Tower. He succeeded in that mission, but the problem is that now, Simon Vesper has come back from the dead, and he plans to unleash a great evil in Gotham. Vesper built Gotham Tower as a giant portal so that evil forces can reach Gotham. Batman and Spawn both arrive at the tower to investigate, and Spawn confuses Batman for a demon, attacking him by surprise. The fight is brief, because Batman is able to explain himself, and Spawn realizes he has made a mistake. They know they have to work together to solve the mystery behind Gotham Tower and Simon Vesper. At that moment, Vesper creates a massive blackout in Gotham, leaving only Gotham Tower with power. He then burns specific buildings across the city, creating a gigantic pentagram of fire with Gotham Tower right in the middle. All of this is part of Vesper's plans to bring the dead back to life and to claim every soul in Gotham for hell. When Batman confronts Simon Vesper, he can't do anything because Vesper transforms into a demon and only Spawn can face him. The powers of Spawn are enough to defeat the demon, with a little help from Batman. In the end, Batman returns to the darkness and Spawn has found someone to look up to. These graphic novels show us two different versions of the first meetings between Batman and Spawn, and although the situations are similar, the approach to them is completely different. And I'm not talking about just Batman going to New York and Spawn going to Gotham. Spawn vs. Batman is a graphic novel that prioritizes style over substance. You have to read this story for the visual appeal, because the writing makes it impossible to care about the plot. In fact, the plot doesn't matter. It's just an excuse to make Batman and Spawn fight each other. This book could pass for fan fiction, and nobody would notice the difference. This was the first time in 8 years that Frank Miller wrote Batman, and at the very start of the book, they tell the readers that the story happens in the universe of The Dark Knight Returns. The cover of the book is quite evocative of the cover of The Dark Knight Returns, and all of these would explain why Batman acts so irrationally, so impulsive, so out of character. A Batman that acts violently is only appropriate in the continuity of The Dark Knight Returns, and even then, it's not always effective. Frank Miller's vision of Batman is always twisted, and that's why most of his Batman books, with only one exception, don't work. For that reason, Batman Spawn War Devil is better when it comes to the writing. Chuck Dixon, Doug Mahnke, and Alan Grant were all the main Batman writers around that time, so having them work together in this crossover was nothing short of genius. We're talking about 3 of the best and most consistent Batman writers of the 90s, and their experience shows in this book. They deliver impeccable characterization for both Batman and Spawn. They make you care and empathize for both characters. You really want to know more about them, especially about Spawn, as they treat him like a proper character with needs and motivations. The plot of both stories develops around a mystery, but while in Spawn vs. Batman this mystery is neglected in favor of the major set pieces between the titular characters, the plot in War Devil is what drives the story forwards and makes it interesting. The same goes for the ending. In Spawn vs. Batman things happen extremely fast, and the final page is made of the most absurd and edgy stuff. In War Devil, on the other hand, there is something to learn by the end of the story. The characters have learned important lessons, showing character growth and all the while clearing every thread and subplot in a satisfying manner. The art in both stories also have completely different approaches. Todd McFarlane worked in Batman in the late 80s, in the Year 2 storyline, where he came up with interesting and good-looking visuals, and honestly, that's what he is really good at. His art is the selling point of every one of his stories, including this one. Most of the pages of the Spawn vs. Batman crossover are designed as splash pages of both characters in cool poses. The problem with that is that it's not effective in terms of visual storytelling, and that's also why the art in War Devil is better. There is no denying that McFarlane's art is striking, visually exciting and sharp, but when it comes to tell a cohesive, compelling and coherent visual story, there are few artists better than Klaus Janson. Janson had also worked in Batman in the past as an inker in The Dark Knight Returns and the main artist in the Gothic storyline. His art might not be as spectacular or appealing as McFarlane's, but at least he can tell a good story with his art. So which one is the best crossover? Well, I think it depends on what you prefer. Spawn vs. Batman was clearly created for fans of Spawn and the edgy comics of the 90s. There is plenty of violence, almost no logic or characterization, and a sense of speed so fast that it would make the Flash blush. The art is full of style, and what really matters is the action. If that's the sort of book you enjoy, then you would be delighted by Spawn vs. Batman. But if that's the sort of book you enjoy, you might not like War Devil. Spawn feels out of place in this one. He is a character created for sheer action, style and violence, but in War Devil he is way too passive. The Spawn that people like would never stand by and do detective work alongside Batman to figure out clues and solve mysteries. And that's pretty much what happens in War Devil. The story is not about the action or set pieces, it's about slowly building up tension and develop a compelling narrative with an underlying mystery and a terrific understanding of character motivations and interactions. And that is precisely why I prefer War Devil. I don't like the irrational version of Frank Miller's Batman, who goes after every single punk that he can pronounce. In Spawn vs. Batman, Batman acts violently, but in War Devil, Batman reacts violently only when he is attacked or provoked, which is much more appropriate. This Batman is more analytical, logical, and intelligent, and naturally, that's a better portrayal. Having Spawn acting irrationally in War Devil makes much more sense than Batman doing it in Spawn vs. Batman. War Devil also takes the time to introduce Spawn to the readers and answers most questions about the characters. The writers connected Spawn's background with the story they were telling, adding historical relevance to the event. It's obvious that DC Comics wanted the readers to be clear about who Spawn was, while Image Comics could ignore background stories. Both are over-the-top graphic novels, yes, but it's only natural since Spawn is an over-the-top character. I guess it all boils down to this: if you're a fan of Spawn, then Spawn vs. Batman is the book for you. But if you're a fan of Batman, then War Devil is the way to go. And since I am the biggest Batman nerd, of course I'm going to choose War Devil every single time. And that's all I have for today. So, which one is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments. Also, don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell, and leave a like. Also remember you can follow me on Twitter at Salazar. Friends, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.